Ever wish you had like a confidence boost button?
Yeah.
Especially when you're facing like a job interview or asking someone out or even like
Oh, yeah.
just starting that project that you've been putting off.
Yeah.
Well, in a way, you do.
Oh.
Today, we are diving deep into the world of confidence and fear
Yes.
and exploring how to turn fear into like a fuel source
I like that.
and create a recipe for genuine self-assurance.
Awesome.
So while we're not therapists,
Right.
we will be sharing personal experiences
Yes.
and research-backed strategies
Yeah.
to help you navigate those tricky
Yeah.
confidence hurdles.
For sure.
You might even get a laugh.
Wow.
Story involving...
Oh, gosh.
Right. Okay, well, we'll see.
But seriously,
Yeah.
we're going beyond the surface here.
Okay.
And we're going to be exploring real strategies for building confidence,
I love it.
managing fear,
Yes.
drawing from our own lives.
And the research that's out there.
Awesome.
So I think you'll find that facing fears can be a lot less scary
Right.
that we build them up to be
Absolutely.
in our minds.
Totally.
So let's get started.
Okay.
What exactly is
Yeah.
self-confidence?
So self-confidence, it's not about strutting around like you know everything.
Right.
It's not about that.
Okay.
True self-confidence is an inner belief in your ability to handle challenges.
Okay.
It's trusting yourself to figure things out,
Right.
even when you don't have all the answers.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's less about being fearless and more about being willing to act despite fear.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
kind of like astronauts before launch.
Right.
I'm sure they're feeling some fear,
Yeah, for sure.
but they still strap in and blast off,
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Exactly. And speaking of blasting off, remember that karaoke debut?
Oh, here we go.
You were terrified, but you got up there. Voice cracks and all.
This is true.
And you sang that Bon Jovi song.
Yeah, I did.
You did. And it might not have been perfect,
It wasn't.
but you did it and you survived the potential for embarrassment.
Yeah, but that's kind of the point, right?
Right, exactly.
That's kind of the point that I think we're going for here.
Yes.
Is that when you face those
Yeah.
awkward situations head on,
Yeah,
it does build confidence.
absolutely.
It's like proving to yourself that you can handle the discomfort.
Yes. And the takeaway here is that stepping outside of your comfort zone,
Yeah.
even in small ways, helps you realize that you can handle uncomfortable situations.
Right.
And that's how true confidence is built.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about fear itself.
Okay.
What is it and where does it come from?
So fear
Yeah.
is this fascinating blend of biology and psychology.
Okay.
Biologically, it's our body's alarm system that's protecting us from danger.
Okay.
It's that classic fight or flight response.
Right. Right. But these days, our fears aren't always about actual physical threats.
Right.
Right.
Let's face it, you're unlikely to be chased by a saber-toothed tiger
Right.
if you mess up a presentation at work.
Exactly.
But your body might react in a similar way.
Right.
The adrenaline, the tightness in your chest, it can feel like real danger,
Right.
even when it's not.
Even when it's not, so it's like our bodies are playing a trick on us,
Totally.
reacting to perceived threats as if they were actual physical danger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And psychologically, fear often stems from uncertainty and a perceived lack of control.
Right.
So when we encounter the unknown,
Yeah.
a new job, a first date public speaking, our minds can create these worst-case scenarios.
Right. Brains are expert storytellers, but they specialize in horror.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
But understanding where fear comes from can be incredibly liberating because it helps us realize that fear is a natural human response
Okay.
that's rooted in our biology and our experiences.
Okay.
It's not a personal failing,
That's a good point.
right?
So instead of beating ourselves up for feeling afraid,
Right.
we can start to see it as a signal, something to work with and learn from.
Precisely. It's like fear was saying, hey, pay attention. There's something important happening here.
Yeah. And that something important could actually be an opportunity for growth.
You got it. When we feel fear, it often means we're on the verge of something meaningful,
Okay.
something that has the potential to change us for the better.
So fear isn't the enemy. It's more like a grumpy tour guide,
I love that.
trying to keep us safe, but maybe not always choosing the most scenic route.
That's a great analogy. We need to learn to listen to fear's warnings,
Right.
but not let it dictate our entire journey.
Okay, I'm starting to see fear in a whole new light.
Good.
But how do we actually start to overcome it and build that unshakable confidence?
One of the most powerful tools is something you might think is cheesy, but it really works: positive self-talk.
Okay, I admit I'm skeptical,
Okay.
but I'm willing to hear you out. What do you mean by positive self-talk?
It's about becoming aware of the words we use to talk to ourselves.
Okay.
Because those words have a huge impact on our self-perception.
So instead of saying, I'm going to mess this up,
Right.
I could try saying something like, I'm going to do my best,
Yes.
and I'm capable of handling whatever comes my way.
Exactly. You're replacing negative self-defeating thoughts with more balanced and encouraging ones.
Okay.
It's like having an inner cheerleader instead of an inner critic.
Right.
And over time, these positive affirmations can actually rewire our brains,
Okay.
helping us see ourselves in a more capable light.
So it's not just about thinking positive thoughts. It's
Yeah.
about actively changing the way we talk to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any tips for making this shift?
One strategy is to start small. Instead of trying to conquer your biggest fear all at once,
Right.
break it down into smaller, more manageable steps.
So instead of aiming to be like a world-famous public speaker
Right.
right away,
Mm-hmm.
I might start practicing my presentation skills
Yeah.
in front of a small group of friends.
Exactly. And as you achieve each milestone,
Okay.
you build evidence
Mhm.
that you are capable,
Right.
which reinforces your confidence. It's like leveling up in a video game.
Okay.
You start with the easier levels and gradually work your way up to the boss battles.
That's a great analogy.
Right.
It makes the whole process seem less daunting.
Yeah. So what about...
And don't forget to celebrate each win, no matter how small.
Okay.
Keep that momentum going.
Celebrations are key.
Yes.
But what about those everyday moments
Mm-hmm.
where we need a quick confidence boost?
Right.
Are there any daily habits
Absolutely.
that we can cultivate
Yeah.
to strengthen our self-belief
Visualization is a powerful tool.
that athletes often use to improve their performance? And you can apply it to any area where fear is holding you back.
Like picturing yourself succeeding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Find a quiet space.
Okay.
Close your eyes and imagine yourself in that situation
Mm-hmm.
that triggers your fear.
Right.
And instead of picturing everything going wrong,
Okay.
visualize yourself handling the situation calmly and confidently.
Okay.
See yourself speaking clearly, making eye contact,
Okay.
feeling in control.
It's like creating a mental movie
Yes,
of yourself succeeding.
that's a great way to put it. The more vividly you can picture it,
Okay.
the better. By repeatedly visualizing success, you're training your mind to believe it's possible.
Okay, so when the real situation comes around,
Right.
our brain is already familiar with the feeling of success,
Yes,
making it less daunting.
exactly.
It's like having a mental rehearsal that reduces anxiety
Mm-hmm.
and boosts confidence in those high-pressure moments.
Another important tool to add to your confidence toolkit is the willingness to embrace imperfection.
You mean accepting that we're not going to be perfect all the time?
Right.
Isn't that kind of giving up?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Perfectionism can actually be a huge obstacle to building confidence.
Okay.
Because it sets the bar so high that we're constantly afraid of making mistakes.
Right.
We set ourselves up for failure before we even begin.
So instead of striving for perfection, what should we aim for?
Aim for excellence.
Okay.
Excellence allows for learning, growth, and iteration.
Go ahead.
Perfection, on the other hand, is this rigid, unattainable ideal
All right.
that often leads to procrastination and fear of failure.
So it's about giving ourselves permission to make mistakes and learn from them,
Yes,
to embrace the process rather than obsessing over a flawless outcome.
precisely. And when we embrace imperfection, we free ourselves from the constant pressure
Yeah.
to be flawless.
I can get with that.
We can focus on the process, on the learning, on the joy of trying new things, even if we don't get it right the first time.
That's a huge weight off my shoulders.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm finally allowed to be human.
And when we release that pressure,
Yeah.
we create space for creativity, innovation, and genuine self-expression
Right.
because we're not so afraid of messing up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The key is to realize that when we embrace imperfection, we become more resilient.
Right.
We're not devastated by every setback. We can bounce back more quickly
Yeah.
and learn from our mistakes.
This is all making so much sense.
Huh?
It's like we're building a toolkit for conquering fear
Yes,
and building confidence step
Yeah.
by step.
exactly.
But let's be real. There are times when fear and anxiety
Right.
can feel overwhelming,
Yeah.
even when we're trying our best to manage them.
Mm-hmm.
What are some strategies for coping with those moments of intense stress?
That's an important question because stress management is crucial for building confidence.
Okay.
When we're stressed out, our brains are in survival mode,
Right.
making it harder to think clearly and make rational decisions.
It's like trying to build a house during an earthquake.
Right.
Not the ideal environment for construction.
Exactly. So what can we do to create a calmer inner space?
Yeah.
One of the simplest yet most effective techniques is deep, slow breathing.
I've heard about this, but does it really work?
Absolutely. When we're stressed, our breathing becomes shallow and rapid.
Right.
So by consciously slowing down our breath, we signal to our nervous system that it's okay to relax.
It's like hitting the pause button on our stress response.
Exactly. Here's a simple technique.
Okay.
Inhale deeply for a count of 4. Hold your breath for a count of 4.
Mm-hmm.
Exhale slowly for a count of 4 and pause for a count of 4.
Okay.
Repeat this several times and you'll start to feel a sense of calm wash over you.
Okay. I'm adding that to my mental toolbox.
Good.
What about when stress manifests as physical tension,
Mm-hmm.
like tight shoulders or a clenched jaw?
Progressive muscle relaxation can be incredibly helpful for that.
How does that work?
You systematically tense and release different muscle groups in your body,
Okay.
starting with your toes and working your way up to your head.
So like clenching my fists and then letting go.
Exactly.
Okay.
Hold the tension for a few seconds and then release it completely.
Mm-hmm.
As you go through each muscle group,
Okay.
you'll notice that your body starts to feel more relaxed.
It's like giving your body a mini massage.
That's a great way to put it. And the more you practice this technique,
Okay.
the more you become aware of where you hold tension in your body,
Right.
which makes it easier to release it.
Okay, this is all great advice, but sometimes it feels like stress is all in our heads.
Right.
Like our thoughts are racing a million miles a minute. What can we do to calm that mental chatter?
That's where mindfulness and meditation come in.
Okay, I've heard a lot about mindfulness,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure I fully understand it. What exactly is it?
Mindfulness is all about bringing your attention to the present moment without judgment.
So instead of dwelling on the past or worrying about the future,
Right.
I'm focusing on what's happening right now.
Exactly. And you can practice mindfulness in many ways,
Okay.
like paying attention to your breath, noticing the sensations in your body, or simply observing the sights and sounds around you.
It's like hitting the reset button on our brains, bringing us back to the here and now.
That's a great way to think about it. And even a few minutes of mindful practice
Okay.
can make a big difference in reducing stress and creating a sense of calm.
This is all really helpful, but sometimes it feels like stress is rooted in feeling overwhelmed
Right.
by everything we have. To do any advice for managing that feeling of overwhelm?
Time management is key.
Okay.
When we feel like we have too much on our plates,
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to get stressed and anxious.
Because it feels like we're constantly playing catch up.
Exactly. So what can we do?
Yeah?
Start by creating a schedule, breaking down big tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks,
Okay.
and prioritizing what's most important.
So instead of trying to tackle everything at once,
Right.
we're creating a roadmap for getting things done step by step.
That's right. And when we feel more organized,
Yeah.
we naturally feel less stress.
This is all great advice.
Mm.
But what if we've tried all of these techniques and stress still feels like it's taking over our lives?
Okay.
Is there a point where we should seek professional help?
Absolutely. There's no shame in seeking support from a therapist or a counselor.
Okay.
They can provide personalized strategies for managing stress and anxiety, and they can help us identify any underlying issues
Right.
that might be contributing to our feelings of overwhelm.
So it's like having a coach in our corner
Yeah.
to guide us through the tougher parts of the journey.
That's a great analogy, and sometimes having that extra support
Right.
can make all the difference in helping us build lasting confidence.
This has been an incredibly insightful conversation.
Good.
I'm feeling so much more empowered to face my fears
Awesome.
and start building my confidence.
That's fantastic to hear. And remember, building confidence is a journey, not a destination.
Meaning?
It's an ongoing process of learning,
Okay.
growing, and challenging ourselves to step outside our comfort zones.
So we don't just reach a point where we're suddenly confident.
Right.
It's something we cultivate over time.
Exactly. And the more we practice these strategies, the more natural they become.
This has been so helpful.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up,
Okay.
I have one final question.
Yes.
How do we measure our progress?
Okay.
How do we know if we're actually getting better
Yeah.
at this whole confidence thing?
That's a great question, and it ties into the importance of celebrating our wins.
Meaning?
Too often we focus on what we haven't accomplished yet,
Right.
on the mistakes we've made,
Yeah.
on the areas where we still feel insecure.
It's like we're constantly looking for the flaws
Right,
instead of appreciating the progress.
exactly. So instead, start noticing and celebrating your achievements,
Okay.
no matter how small they may seem.
Like giving myself a high five for speaking up in a meeting, even if I was nervous.
Exactly. Or acknowledging that you finished a challenging project, even if it wasn't perfect.
It's about giving ourselves credit for the effort, for the courage to try.
Precisely. And when we start to acknowledge our wins, we train our brains to see ourselves as capable and successful.
It's like building a highlight reel of our successes
Yeah,
to combat those negative self-beliefs.
that's a great way to put it. And the more we focus on our wins, the more confident we become.
This is such a powerful reminder. I'm feeling inspired to start celebrating my successes.
Awesome.
Both big and small.
That's wonderful to hear. And remember, building confidence is a journey, but it's a journey worth taking.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
What are some key takeaways our listeners should walk away with?
Here are a few things to keep in mind.
Okay.
First, confidence is a skill, not a personality trait.
Okay.
It's something we can all develop with effort and practice.
So it's not about being born confident. It's about making a conscious decision to cultivate confidence.
Exactly. Second, fear is a natural human response, but it doesn't have to control our lives. We can learn to reframe fear as a signal of opportunity, and we can use the strategies we've discussed to manage it effectively.
So it's about befriending our fear instead of battling it.
That's a great way to put it.
And third, celebrate your wins no matter how small they may seem.
Yes.
Okay.
Acknowledge your progress. Give yourself credit for your efforts,
Right.
and focus on building that positive self-belief.
Because every step forward, every little victory
Right.
adds up to create a more confident and empowered version of ourselves.
Exactly. And remember, we're all on this journey together.
This has been such an inspiring conversation.
Good.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
It's been my pleasure. And to our listeners, keep exploring,
Okay.
keep growing, and keep believing in yourselves.
That's a great note to end on. We'll be back next week
Okay.
with another deep dive into a topic that's sure to spark your curiosity.
Awesome.
Until then, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep learning.
And building on that idea of community, don't underestimate the power of mentors and supportive networks.
It's like having a team of cheerleaders and wise guides
Right.
to help us navigate those challenging paths.
Exactly. Mentors can provide invaluable advice and encouragement,
Yeah.
especially when we're doubting ourselves.
Like having a personal GPS system
Yeah.
for our confidence journey.
That's a great analogy in supportive communities.
Yeah.
Whether online or in person, can offer a sense of belonging and shared experience.
Right. Knowing that we're not alone in facing these fears can be incredibly empowering.
It normalizes those feelings and reminds us that everyone struggles with confidence at some point.
Yeah. It takes the pressure off of feeling like we have to have it all figured out.
Precisely. And when we surround ourselves with people who believe in us, it becomes easier to believe in ourselves.
This is making me think about how our body language and presentation
Right.
can also play a role in building confidence.
That's a fascinating point, and it ties into this concept of fake it till you make it.
I've heard about that.
Yeah.
But does it really work? Isn't it just pretending?
It's more than just pretending. It's about consciously using our body language to project confidence, even if we don't feel it entirely on the inside.
So like standing up straight, making eye contact, and speaking with a clear voice?
Exactly. Those external cues can actually send signals back to our brains,
Interesting.
helping us to feel more confident.
So our bodies are tricking our minds
Right.
into believing we're more confident than we actually feel.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And the more we practice those confident postures and gestures, the more natural they become and the more our internal feelings start to align with them.
So it's a kind of positive feedback loop.
Exactly. And even small adjustments like smiling more often
Okay.
or dressing in a way that makes us feel good
Right.
can have a surprisingly big impact on our confidence levels.
I can definitely relate to that sometimes. Just putting on a great outfit
Right.
can make me feel like I can conquer the world.
Exactly. It's about finding those little things that give you a boost
Mm-hmm.
and using them strategically.
Okay. I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
We've got our internal strategies,
Yeah.
like positive self-talk and visualization. And then we can layer on these external confidence boosters,
Right.
like power poses and dressing for success.
Yeah.
It's like building a multi-layered shield of confidence.
That's a fantastic way to put it. And remember, everyone's confidence journey is unique.
Right.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Yeah.
It's about experimenting and finding what resonates with you.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But speaking of unique challenges, what about those fears that are specifically related to social situations?
Yeah.
Like networking events or public speaking. Any advice for overcoming those?
That's a great question, and it's important to remember that social anxiety is incredibly common.
Okay.
So you're definitely not alone if you feel that way.
So I'm not the only one who feels like hiding in the corner at parties.
Absolutely not. And the good news is that there are strategies for managing social anxiety
Okay.
and building confidence in those situations.
Okay. Tell me everything.
One of the most effective approaches is gradual exposure.
Meaning?
Instead of jumping into the deep end, start with smaller, less intimidating steps.
So if I'm terrified of networking events, I could start by attending a smaller gathering.
Right.
Or focusing on making a connection with just one person.
Exactly. And as you become more comfortable in those lower pressure environments, you can gradually increase the challenge.
It's like slowly acclimating ourselves to the social waters.
That's a great analogy. And another key strategy is preparation.
So like practicing my elevator pitch before a networking event.
Yes.
Or rehearsing my presentation multiple times before delivering it to a large audience.
Precisely, the more prepared we feel,
right,
the less anxious we'll be.
Because we're not walking into the situation feeling completely unprepared and unsure of what to say or do.
Exactly. And if those negative thoughts start creeping in, like they're going to think I'm boring,
right,
or I'm going to make a fool of myself, try to challenge them.
How?
Ask yourself if there's any evidence to support those thoughts.
Right.
Often we're catastrophizing the situation and making assumptions that aren't based in reality.
It's like our brains are playing worst-case scenario roulette.
That's a great way to put it. So instead, try to focus on the positive aspects of the situation.
Like the opportunity to connect with interesting people.
Right.
Or share my ideas with a wider audience.
Exactly. And remember, most people are more focused on their own anxieties than on judging you.
This is so reassuring. I'm already feeling more confident about tackling those social situations.
That's fantastic to hear. And the more you practice these strategies, the more comfortable you'll become in those settings.
Okay, we've talked about embracing imperfection.
Yes.
But I know a lot of people, myself included, struggle with perfectionism. How do we let go of that need to be perfect?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Because perfectionism can be a real confidence killer.
Right. It's like we're setting ourselves up for failure because no one can be perfect all the time.
Exactly. So the first step is to acknowledge that perfection is an illusion.
Right.
It doesn't exist.
So we're all perfectly imperfect.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And once we accept that, we can start to focus on progress over perfection instead of striving for flawless results.
Okay.
Aim for continuous improvement.
So it's about celebrating the small wins and learning from our mistakes.
Precisely. And when we shift our focus from the outcome to the process, we take the pressure off of being perfect, which frees us up to be more creative, more innovative, and more authentic.
Because we're not so afraid of making mistakes.
Exactly. And those mistakes often become valuable lessons that help us grow and learn.
So it's about seeing failures as opportunities for growth, not as signs of inadequacy.
That's a powerful reframe. Yeah.
And when we embrace that mindset, we start to see that our flaws and imperfections are actually part of what makes us unique and interesting.
This is so liberating. It's like giving ourselves permission to be human.
Exactly. And when we embrace our imperfections, we become more compassionate with ourselves and with others.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
Good.
I'm feeling so much more equipped to face my fears and start building my confidence.
That's great to hear.
But before we wrap up, I have one final question.
Yeah.
What's the biggest piece of advice you would give to someone who's struggling with confidence?
That's a great question. And my advice would be this. Be kind to yourself.
Meaning?
We often hold ourselves to incredibly high standards, and we beat ourselves up when we don't meet them.
It's like we're our own worst critics.
Exactly. So instead, try to cultivate a sense of self-compassion.
How do we do that?
treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding
that you would offer to a good friend.
So instead of saying, I'm such an idiot for messing that up,
Right.
I could try saying, everyone makes mistakes.
Yes.
It's okay to feel disappointed, but I'm still learning and growing.
Exactly. By speaking to ourselves with more kindness and empathy,
Right.
we create a more supportive inner environment that allows us to learn and grow without feeling constantly judged and criticized.
This is such a powerful reminder.
Yeah.
I think we all need to hear that more often.
I agree. And when we start to be kinder to ourselves,
Yeah.
we often find that our confidence naturally starts to blossom. Because
Because we're no longer holding ourselves back with those negative self-beliefs.
Exactly. We're free to explore, to try new things, to embrace our imperfections.
Right.
And to step into our full potential.
This has been such an inspiring conversation.
Good.
I'm feeling so much more motivated to start practicing these strategies.
Awesome.
And start building my confidence.
That's fantastic to hear. And remember, building confidence is a journey.
Okay.
But it's a journey worth taking.
Okay. I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
What are some key takeaways our listeners should walk away with?
Here are a few things to keep in mind. First, confidence is a skill, not a personality trait.
Okay.
It's something we can all develop with effort and practice.
So it's not about being born confident. It's about making a conscious decision to cultivate confidence.
Exactly. Second, fear is a natural human response. But it doesn't have to control our lives. We can learn to reframe fear as a signal of opportunity.
Okay.
And we can use the strategies we've discussed to manage it effectively.
So it's about befriending our fear instead of battling it.
That's a great way to put it. And third, celebrate your wins no matter how small they may seem.
Okay.
Acknowledge your progress, give yourself credit for your efforts, and focus on building that positive self-belief.
Because every step forward, every little victory adds up to create a more confident and empowered version of ourselves.
Exactly. And remember, we're all on this journey together.
This has been such an inspiring conversation.
Good.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
It's been my pleasure. And to our listeners, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep believing in yourselves.
That's so true. And, you know, it's interesting because we've talked a lot about strategies for building confidence from within.
Right.
But I'm also kind of curious about the external factors that can influence how confident we feel like.
Yeah.
How we present ourselves to the world.
That's a great question. And it brings up this idea of fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
I know it sounds a bit cheesy.
Yeah.
But there's actually some real science behind this concept.
Okay, I've heard that phrase before, but honestly, I'm a little skeptical. Isn't it just pretending?
It's more than just pretending. It's about consciously using our body language to project confidence, even if we don't feel it entirely on the inside.
So like standing up straight, making eye contact,
Yeah.
speaking with a clear voice.
Exactly. Those external cues can actually send signals back to our brains.
Oh, interesting.
Helping us to feel more confident. It's like our bodies are tricking our minds into believing we're more confident than we actually feel.
That's fascinating. I've definitely noticed that.
Yeah.
When I force myself to smile, even when I'm not feeling particularly happy,
Right.
my mood actually starts to lift a little bit.
Yeah. That's exactly what we're talking about.
But it really does work.
Yeah. And the more we practice those confident postures and gestures,
Right.
the more natural they become. And eventually our internal feelings start to align with them.
Oh, wow.
It becomes this positive feedback loop.
It's like we're creating a new default setting for our confidence level.
Exactly.
I like that. Are there any other external factors that can play a role?
Absolutely. Even small adjustments like dressing in a way that makes us feel good can have a surprisingly big impact on our confidence levels.
I can definitely relate to that sometimes. Just putting on a great outfit makes me feel like I can conquer the world.
Exactly. It's about finding those little things that give you a boost and using them strategically.
Okay. I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
We got our internal strategies, like positive self-talk and visualization.
Right.
And then we can layer on these external confidence boosters, like power poses and dressing for success.
Exactly.
It's like building a multi-layered shield of confidence.
That's a fantastic way to put it. And remember, everyone's confidence journey is unique.
Right.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Yeah, that's true.
It's about experimenting and finding what resonates with you.
That makes a lot of sense. But speaking of unique challenges, what about those fears that are specifically related to social situations?
Yeah.
Like networking events or public speaking. Do you have any advice for overcoming those?
That's a great question. Social anxiety is incredibly common.
Okay.
You are definitely not alone if you feel that way.
So I'm not the only one who feels like hiding in the corner at parties.
Absolutely not. And the good news is there are strategies for managing social anxiety and building confidence in those situations.
Okay, tell me everything.
One of the most effective approaches is gradual exposure.
Meaning?
Instead of jumping straight into the deep end, start with smaller, less intimidating steps.
So if I'm terrified of networking events, I might start by attending a smaller gathering.
Right.
With people I already know.
Right.
Or maybe even just focusing on making a connection with one new person.
Exactly. And as you become more comfortable in those lower pressure environments, you can gradually increase the challenge.
Like slowly acclimating ourselves to the social waters.
That's a great analogy.
I like that.
And another key strategy is preparation.
So like practicing my elevator pitch before a networking event?
Yes.
Or rehearsing my presentation multiple times before delivering it to a large audience?
Precisely, the more prepared we feel, the less anxious we'll be.
Right, because we're not walking into the situation feeling completely unprepared and unsure of what to say or do.
Exactly, and if those negative thoughts start creeping in like, they're going to think I'm boring.
Right.
Or I'm going to make a fool of myself, try to challenge them.
How?
Ask yourself if there's any real evidence to support those thoughts.
Okay.
Often we're catastrophizing the situation and making assumptions that aren't based in reality.
So instead of feeding those negative thought spirals,
Right.
we can try to interrupt them with a dose of reality.
Precisely. And don't forget that most people are more focused on their anxieties than on judging you.
Wow. That's really reassuring. I never thought about it that way.
We tend to overestimate how much other people are paying attention to us.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to forget that we're all human.
Right.
And we all experience those feelings of insecurity from time to time.
Absolutely. Recognizing that shared humanity can be really helpful in easing social anxiety.
Okay, this is all making so much sense. It's like we're slowly dismantling those fears that have been holding us back in social situations.
That's exactly what we're aiming for. Remember, building confidence is a process.
Right.
And it takes time.
Yeah.
Be patient with yourself and celebrate every step you take toward feeling more comfortable in social settings.
Speaking of steps, I'm curious, what's one final actionable step our listeners can take right now? Start building their confidence.
Here's a simple but powerful challenge. Think of one small step you can take this week.
Okay.
To step outside of your comfort zone.
So something like signing up for that public speaking workshop.
Yes.
Or asking for feedback on a project. Or even just introducing yourself to someone new.
Exactly. Choose something that feels slightly uncomfortable, but not completely overwhelming.
So find that sweet spot between challenge and overwhelm.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And then commit to taking that step no matter how small it may seem.
Because even those tiny steps can create ripples of confidence.
Yes.
That expand outwards into other areas of our lives.
That's a beautiful image, and remember, we're all in this together.
This has been such an empowering conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights.
It's been my absolute pleasure. And to our listeners, keep believing in yourselves. Keep pushing your boundaries and keep celebrating every step along the way.
I love that message. Okay, folks, we'll be back next week.
Okay, sounds good.
With another deep dive into a topic that's sure to spark your curiosity.
Awesome.
Until then, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep those confidence muscles flexing.
And remember, you got this.
Thanks for being a listener. Click the card above to explore our playlist and find more episodes. And hey, if you really appreciate our work and want to help us keep creating awesome content, you can find us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/McAllister. Or if you just want to buy us a coffee, head over to buymecoffee.com/Jamie McAllister. All content, copyright Jamie McAllister.